is Leah from the Ida Public Library, and welcome to our very last Intro to Streaming presentation. For the last two videos that I hope you were able to watch and you enjoyed, our last two videos we talked first about how to get started, how to find what your niche, your area of streaming is going to be, what your subjects and topics. In our second one, we talked about equipment and software and things that you might want to maybe save up for or just get started with some basic equipment and stuff. So if either of those are things that you're interested in that you haven't gotten to see yet, go ahead and rewatch those older videos. For this one, though, for our last one, I wanted to very quickly talk about staying safe online. You've probably heard this spiel before. You've heard about internet safety probably from family members, from your school. But I think there are a couple of things that are very specific to streaming and to becoming sort of an internet figure that I think is worth going over so that you have the most beneficial experience with streaming that you can. So first, hopefully, the internet is not inherently safe. It's a public forum just like anywhere else. Anybody is on there. All sorts of people are on there for various reasons, and it is public. You don't always know who's there, who's watching you. You can't see all their faces, so you don't necessarily know who you're talking to at any time. So you should always keep that thought in mind, that while it feels comfortable in your space on the internet, it is more public than just, being in your room hanging out with your friends. So you want to be a little bit more careful, keep that thought in mind, that some things might not be good to share on this public space. So yeah. The very first rule to think about, you've heard this spiel before, but you should be careful about what you share on the internet. I know this has changed a lot in recent years as a lot of things have shifted to being online, but it is still something to keep in mind that there are people who may use what you share with them in order to find you in person, and that's not really a good thing. So you want to be careful, especially when you're streaming, if you're doing this public front-facing sort of thing, that you are careful about what you share, because people can pick up a lot of little breadcrumbs and figure out maybe where you are or who you are depending on what you're sharing. So things maybe like your name, you don't want to share your full name for certain. You might not even want to share your first name. Where you go to school, you don't want to share information like that, because that could, obviously very easy to pinpoint where you are. If you do any sort of social media other than streaming, or if you're doing live vlogs and you have a video of yourself at a local park or something, somebody could figure out where you are from there. So you might want to think about where do I feel safe to show myself being. So just keep that thought in mind when you're getting ready to share something. Obviously your face, people can find a lot of information about you by your face. So you might want to think about using an avatar, or if you're going to be a VTuber, then you won't need to show your real face. Sharing things like your birthday, pretty innocuous, but sometimes people can use that to figure out how old you are. If you're going to be doing any live events such as conventions, you want to be somewhat careful. Obviously, if you're going to be doing it as like an appearance, or you want to meet with some people there, you don't want to hide that you're going to be there, but you should be careful just in thinking, well, do I want this information public or not? So like we were just discussing, some of your personal privacy elements of streaming, you might not want to use your real name or your real face as a profile picture. So consider using a pseudonym and an avatar. There are streamers online who have never shown their face. I believe Corpse Husband is one who has never done a face reveal, so you don't know what he looks like at all. Lots of VTubers, they don't share their real faces or names. So if you're going to be, you're going to be streaming, and especially if you're under the age of 18, I'd really recommend using a pseudonym and some sort of digital avatar so that you don't have to use your real face. I would also suggest making a separate email account for any streaming business, especially if you're using maybe an email that has your full name in it, if you're using an email that has from your school. Gmail lets you make multiple email accounts, so maybe if you're going to set up a new Twitch account, you might want to set it up under a new email address, which might be under your streaming pseudonym, and that gives you some branding there. Another thing you might want to consider, though this does cost some money, is using a VPN. A VPN, or a virtual private network, is a service that essentially kind of hides your internet usage from the network. So if you use a VPN, it will hide your IP address. It will send out junk data to make sure that nobody's spying on your search history or anything like that. So those are things that might be able to reduce the possibility of somebody being able to track you down based on where you're using the internet. Those do cost money, though, so that is something that you'll want to consider and do some research on which ones would be the most useful for you. Now, account security. This is also very important for streaming in particular, because if you lose your accounts, then if your accounts get hacked, then you've lost your accounts. So just a few things to keep in mind. Try to use unique and strong passwords for your accounts. So use a different password for everything. I know that's a lot to keep track of. You can write it down on a little piece of paper and just hide it in your desk or something. I don't recommend using your browser to save your passwords. Most of them are encrypted, but sometimes there are leaks. So that's up to you. It's up to how safe, how secure you want to be. Be very aware of phishing attempts or people trying to get your password and login information. So if you get an email from, say, Twitch that's asking for your password and it seems a little fishy, definitely go check it. Don't click on any links in the emails. And like I said before, consider attaching your streaming accounts to a different email than your regular one. Just add a little bit of separation to keep yourself a little bit more secure. Now, this is something that's a little bit more specific to streaming. Those last couple of things we were talking about were pretty generic, kind of to anything you're doing on the internet. Dealing with others. If you're going to be a streamer, you are going to be dealing with other people. So you're going to be dealing with an audience, you're going to be dealing with people in your comment section, people maybe sending you messages or emails. And so these are things that, as an internet persona, if you're going to be doing any sort of internet personality activities, other people are going to come into that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So first, in live streams, my first tip is make sure you have very clear stream rules and consequences for those rules. So make sure that you have the rules somewhere that people can easily see them. Things like don't use hateful language or don't backseat game. Make sure that you have those sorts of rules in place so that you can, if somebody does start to act up, you can point to them and say, hey, you have to follow these rules or you get kicked out. That is going to be your first line of defense against anybody trying to stir up trouble. And what's also important is to enforce those rules. So if somebody in your chat is starting to make some trouble and they won't listen to warnings, then you have to enforce those consequences. You have to kick them from the chat. You have to ban them from the chat. So make sure that once you have those rules in place that you're actually enforcing the consequences for them. That's going to help make sure that your live streaming community is a lot more comfortable for you and a lot more safe for everyone involved and just a better time. If you're using Twitch, consider turning on the followers chat only, which only lets people who are following you chat in the live stream. That'll help you avoid bots, and it'll also help you avoid people who maybe don't want to take an extra step to harass you. If you really can't focus on the chat too much while you are playing your game or doing whatever you're doing, consider recruiting a friend to help you be a moderator, somebody who can watch over the chat and nip things in the bud as quickly as they see them. And this is the last tip that I'm going to say, that I'm going to repeat this one over and over, is that if you feel uncomfortable, pay attention to yourself. If something makes you feel like something is wrong, something isn't right, pay attention to that feeling. You don't have to brush it off. You don't have to say, oh, it's just the internet. People act like jerks all the time. If you don't feel comfortable with it, do what you need to do to make sure that you feel safe. So outside of the live stream field, you might be posting also to social media. You might be posting your videos to YouTube afterwards. So you might have to also deal with not just live interaction and engagement, but also engagement after the fact. So the first tip that I have for this is just avoid engaging with people who seem to be committed to misunderstanding you. If somebody's quote tweeting you to dunk on you, just ignore them. You can even block them. If people are starting to get really toxic in your replies, again, you can block them, you can mute them, you can do whatever you need to do to curate your experience. Even if you are a streamer who wants to be mostly public, you have the right to your boundaries, and you are allowed to block whoever you want, mute whoever you want, ignore whoever you want. Also important is that you should try your best to maintain a kind presence yourself. So as much as it is very cathartic to dunk on people when they say something really terrible, if they have some very bad takes, you're going to have a much better time if you just let it go, ignore it, don't bring more drama into your circle. Go talk to somebody in private about how much it annoys you, but especially as somebody who wants to create like a streamer persona, it is important to try to be careful about who you drag into the limelight, because somebody, if you end up having a lot of followers and somebody's saying something stupid and has only one or two, it's just going to cause a whole snowball effect. So really the best thing to do is just block people. Also important, you don't have to respond to everyone. Even if you are trying to be someone who is an internet personality, it's not physically possible for you to talk to every single person. If somebody says something and you're like, I don't know what to say to that, you can just ignore it. You don't have to respond to everyone. And once again, if you're uncomfortable, pay attention. If somebody's making you feel really weird, if somebody's sending you messages that makes you feel uncomfortable, block them. Maybe go talk to a trusted adult if you need to, if something's really making you uncomfortable. And don't be afraid to step back from streaming, from social media, anytime that you feel like you need a break. And like we mentioned just very briefly last time, you may also be having private conversations online. That might be through Twitter direct messages. That might be through emails from people who might want to talk to you about your streaming business, if you're doing it actually as a business. So of course, as always, be clear about your boundaries. If somebody starts talking about something you just don't want to talk about, just say, no, please don't talk about this with me. If they continue going on, then you just block them. You don't have to be polite. You don't have to be nice. Just block them. You don't have to disengage yourself from the conversation or anything. You're not talking to somebody like in the street or anything. You can just stop talking. You can just block and end the conversation. Once again, you don't have to respond to everyone. If maybe your stream starts picking up and you get a bunch of weird emails about people who want to sponsor you or something, you don't have to respond to those. You don't have to respond to every email, every question, every request for a direct message. You really don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to. If you're going to be using something like Twitter, consider turning on the filter that blocks anyone who doesn't follow you from direct messaging you, so that you can only get messages from people you follow and your friends. Other websites may also have protective measures like this as well. And finally, of course, be aware of any red flags. Like we were talking about when being clear with your boundaries, if somebody is making you feel uncomfortable, if an email seems a lot like a phishing scam, just ignore, just block them, don't interact, delete the email and the message. If you're really, really uncomfortable and something is making you very, very upset, make sure you go talk to someone like a trusted adult or someone that can help you with something that might be more serious. And don't forget the report button on most websites, most social media. If somebody's truly being harassing and truly being upsetting or even dangerous, make sure to report that so that there's a paper trail that in fact that behavior was happening. And then finally, in person. If you are maybe someone who's going to end up going to conventions or to attend panels, there are some things you can do just to be safe. Of course, don't go by yourself. Make sure you bring some other people with you. Maybe bring an adult if you're under 18. If you are going to be separating from the group at any time, make sure someone knows where you're going to be and how to get in contact with you. Try to be, as always, be kind. Don't intentionally go out to pick fights with people. I don't think many people are going to do that. But you also don't have to be polite. If that doesn't make any sense, be kind, be nice. But if somebody's starting to make you uncomfortable, throw all the politeness out the window. You can just turn around and leave. If somebody maybe who knows you from streaming comes and flags you down and wants to talk to you, that's absolutely, that's normal. That's something that can happen if you become somewhat well known on the internet. But if it starts to veer into a direction that you're not feeling safe or comfortable, you can just leave. If you can't just leave, try to find someone who can help you extract yourself from the situation. So at the very end of it, the most important thing to take from this presentation is believe in yourself, believe your instincts, take the precautions that you need, but still have fun. This might sound like this is a very fear-mongering presentation. These things can happen, and so it's important to think about the worst-case scenario, but for the most part, a lot of the people you're going to meet are going to be just ordinary people who have no intention of being hurtful. So in the end, you're going to have, I think, a pretty good time as long as you're enjoying streaming. Just keep going, and if you're no longer enjoying it, it's okay to just stop. You don't have to continue if you don't feel up to it anymore. So at the end of this Intro to Streaming series, I want to say thank you guys for watching. If anything about this was helpful to you, please let us know. If you still have questions, please let us know. Send us the questions in the comments. And if you're going to start streaming, I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you guys, and bye-bye.